I wasn't expecting anything to happen that day. I was just fixing a leak under my kitchen sink, hair a mess, sleeves rolled up, and not even remotely trying to impress anyone. But then, two men walked through my door. One was familiar. The other? Unexpected, intense, and impossible to ignore. What followed was something I never imagined. A moment so intimate, so quietly electric, it rewrote how I saw myself and what I thought I needed. This isn't just another story. This is a forbidden confession. A tale of emotional infidelity, unexpected attraction, and a rediscovery of desire I didn't know still lived inside me. If you've ever questioned what it means to feel truly seen again, to crave connection after years of silence, this story is for you. Subscribe, like, and drop your confession in the comments. Let's begin. I wasn't expecting anyone that morning. My hair was a mess, my sweatshirt was stained, and I was half under the sink trying to fix a stubborn leak that had been dripping for days. Divorce had turned me into someone who didn't wait for help anymore. I just did what needed to be done. So there I was, knees on the tile, cursing softly at a rusted valve when I heard the knock. Not one, but two knocks, followed by the low murmur of male voices outside my door. I wiped my hands on a towel and opened it to find two men standing there. The older one I recognized, my neighbor Tom, but the younger one? I paused. Broad shoulders, sun-kissed skin, eyes that scanned me a second too long. "We heard you were having trouble with your pipes," Tom said, chuckling. The younger one raised an eyebrow. "Looks like you've got your hands full already." His voice was deep, playful. There was something unspoken in his gaze, something curious, maybe even attracted. I should have been embarrassed by how I looked, but instead, I laughed. That kind of raw, accidental laughter that escapes when your guard is down. I offered coffee, more to break the tension than anything, and they followed me into the kitchen. The air inside felt warmer now, though I wasn't sure if it was from the broken plumbing or the way the younger one kept glancing over at me. There was a forbidden energy in the room, subtle, but impossible to ignore. It wasn't supposed to feel like anything, just a quick neighborly favor. But even as I filled the kettle, I could feel it, that unspoken chemistry, the kind that stirs before a single line is crossed. It wasn't just a broken sink anymore. Something else had cracked open, something I hadn't felt since long before my marriage ended. And the way he watched me, it wasn't just physical. It was something deeper, a recognition, a hunger. And I wasn't ready for where that might lead, but I wasn't turning away either. The kitchen felt smaller than usual. Maybe it was the three of us moving around each other, or maybe it was the way his eyes followed my hands every time I reached for something. I handed out mugs, 1, 2, and the brush of his fingers on mine sent a ripple through my stomach. He smiled, slow and deliberate. Not cocky, just aware. I wasn't used to being noticed like this anymore. And certainly not while wearing leggings and no makeup. Tom sat back, sipping his coffee, casually chatting about the weather and the repairs. But the younger man, his name was Ryan, barely looked away from me. Every now and then, I'd catch his gaze, and we'd hold it a second too long. That invisible current between us kept building, that forbidden spark neither of us acknowledged, but both felt. I told myself I was imagining it until he leaned in just slightly and said, "You don't look like someone who needs rescuing." That line should have made me laugh, but instead, it made me blush. My marriage had left me starved for moments like this, moments that felt alive, unscripted. For years, I had been the invisible wife, the quiet ex, the one who didn't ask to be desired. And now, With one casual smile and a glance that lingered, I was suddenly the center of something unexpected, something dangerously tempting. Tom was still in the room, but it felt like we were in our own bubble. Each time I passed him a napkin, a spoon, another refill, the emotional tension stretched thinner. It wasn't loud. It was soft, a whisper beneath every move. I didn't say anything bold. Neither did he. But our silence was louder than any flirtation. And as I stood across from him, arms folded, heart racing, I knew we were both thinking the same thing. But neither of us dared to say it yet. I stood there, leaning against the counter, pretending to be occupied with something as simple as drying a cup, when really, my thoughts were anywhere but ordinary. Every time Ryan looked at me, it was like a part of me I had buried deep was waking up. Not just the part that longed to be touched, but the part that longed to be noticed, understood, even desired. I hadn't felt that in years. Not since the quiet collapse of my marriage left me numb inside. He stepped closer, not aggressively, just enough to feel the air shift between us. "Your ex must have been an idiot," he muttered, low and sincere. I laughed softly, but my throat tightened. No one had said something like that to me in forever. Not as a line, as a truth. There was no cheating confession, no affair yet, nothing physical. But this moment was already crossing emotional boundaries I hadn't dared approach in a long time. The kitchen grew hotter, or maybe it was just me. I suddenly became hyper-aware of every movement, his arm resting on the counter, his thumb grazing his mug, the way he looked at my lips when I spoke. My divorce had taught me how to survive, but not how to feel again. And yet, here I was, a woman rediscovering her desire, slowly and without apology. Not ashamed, not confused, just surprised to feel this much from so little. For the first time in years, I didn't feel broken. I felt magnetic. The way he responded to me, with curiosity, not expectation, unlocked something fragile and beautiful. I wasn't being seduced. I was being seen. And that might be even more dangerous. Because once you feel that kind of intimacy again, even in silence, it's nearly impossible to forget. It happened slowly, so slowly, I didn't even realize it at first. One moment, I was locked in a quiet stare with Ryan. The next, Tom was suddenly closer, standing beside me, his presence grounding and steady. He reached past me to adjust the kitchen faucet, his arm brushing mine, and the contrast hit me like a wave. Ryan was all fire and teasing tension. Tom was warmth and quiet strength. And somehow, I felt myself drawn to both in different, undeniable ways. Ryan leaned on the opposite counter, watching, smirking almost, like he knew something Tom didn't. But there was no jealousy in the air, just this strange, shared energy that buzzed through the kitchen. When I turned to look at one, the other waited. When I moved toward the sink, both of them adjusted, letting me pass, letting me lead. It wasn't a competition. It was a rhythm, an emotional pull between comfort and chaos. I had never imagined myself in this situation. Never. But standing there, between two men, one full of mischief and heat, the other brimming with gentle power, I felt something ignite inside me. Not guilt, not confusion, something else. Permission. Permission to want more than one kind of connection. Permission to feel everything at once. It wasn't about betrayal. It was about waking up. There were no words. Just glances. Just the hum of tension thick enough to taste. when Tom placed his hand lightly on my lower back to steady me while I stepped over a wet spot, and Ryan's fingers brushed mine when I passed him a napkin, those touches said everything. I wasn't just being noticed. I was being offered something. Not claimed, offered. And in that moment, I realized it wasn't just about choosing. It was about allowing myself to feel it all. It wasn't planned. It wasn't even spoken. It just happened. One moment, I was wiping the edge of a counter. The next, Ryan was behind me, his voice soft. "You don't have to do everything alone, you know." His hand barely touched my hip, but the message was loud. I turned around, slowly, half afraid, half alive. And when I looked up into his eyes, there was no doubt. Not in me, not in him. The only question left was I ready to stop pretending I didn't want this? Tom hadn't moved, but he was watching. Not possessive, not distant, present. He stepped closer too, standing at my side like an anchor. "You've been carrying too much," he said gently. "You deserve to let go." That's when my chest cracked open, not just from their words, but from everything I had buried over the years. The loneliness, the numbness, the silence I had worn like armor. And now, I didn't want armor. I wanted to be touched. Fully. Finally, Ryan kissed me first. It wasn't aggressive. It was slow, deliberate. Like he knew this was more than just a moment. It was a decision. I didn't pull away. I leaned into it. Then Tom's hand found mine, grounding me while Ryan's lips lit a fire. I was in the middle between two men, yes, but more than that, between who I had been and who I was becoming. There was nothing chaotic about it. It was harmony. For the first time in years, I didn't feel ashamed of wanting. I didn't feel guilty for being desired. I felt in control, seen, cherished, not by one man fighting for attention, but by two who weren't trying to take anything from me. They were offering, and I said yes. Not out of desperation, not out of loneliness, but because in that moment, I was exactly where I needed to be. The kitchen was quiet again. No more laughter, no more glances charged with tension. Just the soft hum of the refrigerator and the afterglow of something deeply human. Tom sat at the table, sipping what was left of his coffee. Ryan stood by the window, his shirt half-buttoned, his gaze somewhere outside. And me? I leaned against the counter, breathing slower, fuller, like something had been released that I didn't even know I was holding in. There was no awkwardness, no scrambling for words, no guilt, no apologies. Just this shared silence that felt understood. The kind that only comes when everyone involved knows what happened wasn't a mistake, but a mutual truth lived out loud. I looked at both of them and smiled. Not from flirtation, not from triumph, but from something deeper. Gratitude. Not for what they gave me, but for what they helped me remember about myself. Because this wasn't just about a forbidden confession. It wasn't about cheating or betrayal or even desire. It was about reconnection. To touch again. To feel again. To be seen again, not as a woman with a past or a title or a role, but just as a woman. A woman who had spent too long trying to stay quiet in a world that stopped listening. And now, in a kitchen that still smelled like coffee and rain, I felt alive. When they left, there were no promises, no plans, just a soft take care and a knowing glance from both of them. And you know what? That was enough. Because I didn't need to know what would happen next. For the first time in a long time, I was enough. And I didn't regret any of it. Sometimes, The moments that shake us the most are the ones no one else will ever understand. What happened that day in my kitchen wasn't just physical, it was emotional, powerful, liberating. It wasn't about cheating in the way people usually define it. It was about reclaiming something I thought I'd lost. Permission to feel, to be touched, to be wanted without guilt. It was a real story of infidelity, but it wasn't dirty. It was healing. So now I ask you, have you ever kept a secret like this? Something so intimate it could only be called forbidden? Tell me below. I'm listening. Don't forget to subscribe to Unfaithful Tales for more cheating wife stories, confessions of infidelity, and true tales of desire, betrayal, and rediscovery. This was one story, but so many more are waiting.